This show is not intended for the treatment or prevention of disease, nor as a substitute for medical treatment, nor as an alternative to medical advice. No part herein, nor any statement, act, nor omission made by Cormac Mannion or Amplitude LLC or its agents or affiliates are to be construed as treatment of any medical condition, medical advice, nor to delay necessary medical treatment. Scientific evidence is discussed for informational purposes only. No patient-doctor relationship is formed. Hey guys, Type-IIx here. This is the 14th episode of Gear Growth and Gains, brought to you by MesoRx, the leading platform for open and unfiltered discussion on enhanced bodybuilding. Members freely share experiences, hold sources accountable, and ensure transparency. No censorship, just real reviews. Visit MesoRx at www.thinksteroids.com/community and start posting. If you want to subscribe to the Gear Growth and Gains newsletter, my semi-monthly 1990s-style email newsletter, for those of you who are too young to have even heard of Dan Duquesne or Usenet, that means straightforward, descriptive, scientific, without bells and whistles. Visit amplitude.com and click sign up for Type-IIx's newsletter. And don't forget to check out @GearGrowthGains, one word, on Telegram. Now, I am now offering my most valued subscribers early access to the Type-IIx Insider Deal, a special offer for premium content via Substack, the Type-IIx Insider Program that includes not only premium, exclusive articles not found anywhere else that delve insanely deep into important drug and training topics, but also exclusive ebooks that I'll distribute through Substack and access to symposiums, my notorious live presentations and Q&As. So check it out. It's a few bucks a month, and only now for a limited time 20% off. That's at type-iix.substack.com/type-iix-insider to sign up for the Type-IIx Insider Program. Okay, so in this episode, we will discuss 4 sections. In section number 1, we'll discuss peptide reconstitution and deal with the issue of why people are making the basic process of dissolving a solute into a solvent, like we all hopefully learned about by secondary school, so damn complicated. In section number 2, we'll talk about emerging data on combined GLP-1 inhibitors and myostatin inhibitors, and results from ongoing phase 2 clinical trials in humans and how good the results are. In section 3, we'll talk about oral steroids, the 17-alpha alkylated AAS, and why they pose a particular elevated risk to the heart generally, but not universally. And finally, in section 4, the Coach's Corner, will discuss why more is not better for training volume, sets and reps, of course, but also density, aka weekly session number. How can this be true, you ask? Well, because the longer you spend training, the lighter you must be lifting, and less effort you must be expending. All right, so let's get into section number 1. In this section, section number 1, peptide reconstitution, we'll discuss how magical thinking has come to pervade the practice of reconstituting peptides, quite unlike the science called chemistry. I'll refer to early bro science and give examples of how it persists today, and I'll explain how marketers and vendors have seized upon this confusion to fill the chaotic void, eking out a small fortune in the process. Let us go back in time to 2005 and the online bodybuilding community, to HTML and JavaScript websites like Bass Killer Online or BKO. BKO was what can only be described as a brain fart made by bros for bros that was actually maintained up until just a couple years ago. So what happened a couple years ago? Well, BKO was sold to one of the more bro science heavy online steroid boards called the Iron Den, or TID. TID bought up the remnants of Underground Bodybuilding Board, or UGBB, in its final gasp for life and consolidated the 2 boards, TID and UGBB. So BKO, Bass Killer Online, in its early 2000s heyday, was really just a smattering of nonsense. It was really bad bro science, but it was considered the go-to authority. Unlike today where there's information overload, in 2005 there was really only this site and a few forums. So I managed to index BKO's content by mirroring it onto an external drive from before its voluntary takedown, all 132 megabytes of it, and refer to it now to illustrate the significance of BKO to this topic of reconstituting peptides. So it was on BKO circa 2005 that an author by the name of Red Baron first popularized the idea that acetic acid, or AA, was a necessary solvent for reconstituting IGF-1 LR3. This misconception was a result of, on the one hand, basic misunderstanding, and on the other, doubling down on mistakes until he was red in the face. The story goes like this. LR3 IGF-1 manufacturers use acetic acid to freeze dry and store unused quantities of receptor-grade powder LR3 under nitrogen cooling for actual legal research chemical supply to the international research market, which is qualitatively different from those more unscrupulous gray market Chinese manufacturers pumping it out now to a niche online bodybuilding community that most of the listeners here are familiar with. So reconstructing these early bro science building blocks of lore is made possible by a fusion of my own memory, internet archiving, and basic logic. What started off as a basic mistake now permeates and confuses, and into any void or out of chaos, entrepreneurialism flourishes. So with this confusion about what solvent matches with what solute, new marketing opportunities for different vehicles of reconstitution abound, arouse, and confuse. This confusion has only been compounded by the explosion in varied items intended for human injection that have become available by internet mail order. For example, NAD+ has been popularized as a sort of preventive cure-all for all sorts of maladies, despite the fact that its bioavailability is actually zero, even when injected intravenously. So NAD+ in particular causes injection pain, and the solution that's been recommended is to use sodium bicarbonate, ostensibly to counter its acidity. Now, despite the vital role of NAD+ in human metabolism and DNA maintenance, its exogenous injection by any route, including intravenous, is totally ineffectual since it's not bioavailable. Its bioavailability is 0.00. So it really is just snake oil, and anyone using it is kind of like the emperor in his new clothes, so to speak. So people aren't going to be happy to hear this. Nevertheless, its pH is around that of a human, 7.4. Since it is so endogenously important, it's right around neutral human acid-base balance. Sodium bicarbonate for injection is just basically used to stabilize patients in emergency hospitalizations who are experiencing metabolic acidosis like DKA or diabetic ketoacidosis versus more commonly normal saline being preferred in extreme dehydration and during surgeries. So with all this confusion, what's the answer? How can I break this down for you into its lowest common denominators to simplify these issues? The answer is to just always use normal saline, which is really the gold standard. In some narrow circumstances, one might rationally prefer bacteriostatic water if A, he doesn't have any allergic reactions to the alcohol, B, he has reason to suspect potential formation of bacteria. But note that, like Kane told us in episode 12, alcohol, like benzyl alcohol or BA, doesn't actually kill bacteria. It merely prevents bacterial growth before it occurs. And finally, C, he absolutely cannot find any sanitary alternative, in which case he should be asking himself, why is he even injecting this stuff? These are pretty dire and unusual circumstances, to say the least. So, what is normal saline, you ask? Let me explain. Normal saline is just table salt in water. It's not very exotic. You can find this in any pharmacy, drugstore, or chemist, and that's a good thing. So what does the normal in normal saline, or NaCl, sodium chloride, or table salt mean? Normal refers to the 0.9% concentration that gives an isotonic solution, such that when normal saline is taken into the body, even if injected intravenously, as it's typically administered in emergency hospital situations, it gives an isotonic solution, meaning that its osmotic pressure is identical to blood plasma, and so it can be used safely for fluid replacement, hydration, and as a diluent for medications. It's basically really hard to fuck yourself up with it, and it's widely used to maintain euhydration during life-threatening surgical procedures. It's also perfectly sterile. To the American listeners, do you remember all of those stories you read about pilgrims using salt to preserve food for their voyage to the New World on the Mayflower? Well, this is applicable here. And I'll note that it's just amazing how much of this ridiculous bro science is readily dismissed by a basic grade school education. On the topic of bacteriostatic or backwater, the risk trade-offs that are the major reason why backwater is regulated, besides the benzyl alcohol causing allergic reactions, is that since people don't accurately gauge its risks that are practically equivalent to normal saline, they overestimate its sanitation. The sanitariness of making your own 0.9% isotonic backwater by using distilled water in 11.11 parts is definitely less than using normal saline, which is 0.9% NaCl and available over the counter everywhere. Normal saline is actually slightly safer practically than backwater for us, and you'll never be asked to produce a license to purchase it anywhere. But Type-IIx, this doesn't sound right. If it's just as good, then why is backwater restricted, you ask? For this very reason, since lay people tend to overestimate its sanitariness and underestimate its risks. So hopefully now that we've reached the end of this segment, some of the foundations for the belief that specific exotic solvents are needed to reconstitute your peptides really and truly is just nonsense. You can use normal saline from the local chemist or pharmacy and be done with it, with even fewer issues than you're likely to experience using bacteriostatic water. Listen up, all you enhanced fucks. The MesoRx forum at thinksteroids.com is your go-to source for everything enhanced. We're not just another board, we're the most trusted harm reduction community in the game. You should be looking only at unfiltered reviews where members don't bullshit. At Meso, they definitely tell it like it is. Don't waste time with shills. Visit thinksteroids.com/community and stop posting now.
Smart bodybuilders know data drives gains. With Team Amplitude, we track your blood work, monitor your progress, and build protocols that deliver results. Whether you need blood work management or full coaching, we've got the science to back your goals. Stop guessing, start growing. Visit amplitude.com, AMPOULETUDE.com, and put real science behind your next cycle.
Okay, so in the second section, Section 2, GLP-1 Agonist and Combined Myostatin Inhibitors, we'll review some of the contents of an article I've written and we'll be sending out by email to my subscribers about the ongoing Phase 2 Courage clinical trial. The results have been coming in and they are very interesting. GLP-1 agonists work, this much is obvious. Unfortunately, when people are left to their own devices, they might allow themselves to simply starve when they're taking them and remain inactive, shedding muscle mass. There are 3 primary strategies to maintain or increase muscle mass while taking a GLP-1 drug. First, exercise, especially lifting weights, resistance exercise. Second, eating, sufficient protein and carbohydrate especially to support lifting weights and retain nitrogen and muscle. And finally, we can make some other drug intervention, which is the subject we'll focus on. Here we'll talk about a new combined drug being used in the Courage trial that's faring very well with minimal side effects and excellent results for muscle retained, namely semaglutide plus the myostatin inhibitor trevogrumab. But first, let's talk about myostatin. What is myostatin? Myostatin is a protein that potently puts the brakes on muscle growth that was discovered in 1997. Since then, clinical trials, meaning experiments on humans, have been conducted by a series of pharmaceutical companies to date. Registrations for myostatin inhibitors began in 2014, and the first results of these experiments started to trickle in about 6 years ago. During these early days, myostatin inhibitor results were pretty lackluster, demonstrating some muscle wasting might be prevented, but there were no strength gains and or real substantial muscle gains. These drugs include some that we see on the market today, which are older generation drugs, things like ACE-031. Fast forward to today, ongoing clinical trials are looking at combining this class of myostatin inhibitors with GLP-1 drugs to prevent muscle wasting, which offers us a new mechanism of muscle anabolic and anti-catabolic effects to hook into for potential synergy. The Courage trial is designed with 4 experimental groups. The first is semaglutide alone. The second is semaglutide plus trevogrumab, a new myostatin inhibitor. The third is a high-dose one of the same, semaglutide plus trevogrumab. And the fourth group is triplet therapy, not just semaglutide plus trevogrumab, but also an anti-activin A drug. Activin A is another protein that sits above myostatin in the chain of proteins that put a brake on muscle growth and size. At the molecular level, with the triplet combination of semaglutide plus trevogrumab, the myostatin inhibitor, plus garetosmab, the anti-activin A, there wasn't just a retention of muscle to the tune of 50% more muscle kept, but with higher dose trevogrumab, fat loss actually accelerated, apparently by blocking the halting of muscle growth that impacts metabolism. The result was that 85% of weight loss was fat versus only 2/3 with the other group. Not bad considering no weightlifting or exercise and just starvation level dieting. At the molecular level, you're getting complementary effects in SMAD signaling pathways. Myostatin normally activates SMAD2/3 signaling, which inhibits muscle growth. BMPs are bone morphogenic proteins, other family members of the TGF-beta superfamily alongside follistatin and myostatin, have opposite effects and actually promote muscle growth. For example, BMP7 activates SMAD158, that in turn increases AKT/mTOR to increase muscle size. This acronym salad of gobbledygook serves one singular point: to illustrate the diversity of these pathways from all the other quote-unquote normal drugs in our arsenal. Anabolic steroids that activate androgen receptor, or AR, clenbuterol that activates beta-2 AR, and cyclic AMP, rather than inhibitory, putting the brakes on muscle growth a la myostatin, a highly conserved protein only expressed in human skeletal muscle. GH drives IGF-1 and therefore AKT phosphorylation through virtually all tissues of the human body, from muscle to bone. Myostatin is separate, distinct, and muscle-specific. At bottom, we know as a rule that anabolic action on human muscle via different pathways combines synergistically or greater than additively. In this manner, combining trevogrumab, a myostatin inhibitor, whose tolerability is now proven to be outstanding from the Courage trial results to date, which is about halfway through, offers a golden opportunity for synergy. Just leave out the anti-activin A drug. This one caused considerable side effects, with 28.3% of the patients receiving it refusing to continue through the trial. That's 112 people. And it was for weird shit, like loss of eyebrows, mouth sores, UTIs, and nosebleeds. So fuck that noise. This new crop of inhibitors of myostatin, on the other hand, like trevogrumab, are safe, probably because they are so selective and since myostatin is specifically present only in human skeletal muscle. Don't mix them up, though. They all have weird names and are hard to pronounce. Okay, guys, so here in this third section, section 3, we will discuss why oral 17-alpha alkylated steroids are generally worse for the heart than injectables. First and foremost, with the exception of dianabol and an unusual steroid to see in a bodybuilder's arsenal called methyl testosterone, these drugs don't aromatize. Estrogens oppose androgens' effects on hepatic lipase, an enzyme integrally involved in lipid metabolism, or in other words, an enzyme in the liver that controls the flux of LDL and HDL levels. While androgens, and particularly the non-aromatizable oral 17-alpha alkylated steroids, increase what is called hepatic triglyceride lipase activity, a liver enzyme that breaks down fatty acids from larger parts like triacylglycerol and phospholipids that are constituent parts of lipoproteins like LDL and HDL. So what happens is the oral steroids cause a shift from larger HDL2 to smaller HDL3 particles, and thereby reduce HDL and increase LDL. It's dyslipidemia. These smaller particles are much less like HDL, the large lipoprotein particles, and even less like your previous LDL particles, but more like VLDL, or very low-density lipoproteins. These smaller lipids then can more easily coagulate in the nooks and crannies of our tickers and cause us to drop dead from a heart attack. This is reflected also by an increase to apolipoprotein B, or ApoB, that gives insight into VLDL. And it's also possible that oral steroids additionally increase liver secretion of these lipoproteins, these VLDL and apolipoprotein B particles directly. The non-aromatizable 17-alpha alkylated AAS, or in other words, any oral steroid you're likely to use besides dianabol, are more dyslipidemic or worse for lipids than injectable ones like testosterone, nandrolone, boldenone, or EQ, or ment or trestolone, because they are either non-aromatizable or resistant to aromatization and therefore lack estrogen benefits to lipids, because estrogens decrease this hepatic triglyceride lipase activity, HTGLA, and because they're metabolized primarily in the liver, where all of this HTGLA stuff is happening. That's what the 17-alpha attachment does, makes the liver metabolize everything. As a result, they tend to have worse effects on hepatic proteins like hepatic lipase and are more dyslipidemic and atherosclerotic than injectable androgens, especially testosterone. Anavar in particular, which is known for its harsh effects on lipids, has a unique hepatic ketogenic mechanism that depends on this increase to hepatic triglyceride lipase activity. It is the unfortunate second edge to the double-edged sword of Anavar, that its shedding ab fat unfortunately also sheds larger HDL2 particles, causing a shift to smaller, more atherosclerotic HDL3 ones. Estrogens are also beneficial for redox balance. Basically, think free radical stress, or ROS, reactive oxygen species. On this point, trenbolone is particularly notorious. Despite its not being metabolized extensively by the liver, because we inject it, unlike the oral 17-AAs, it's pretty harsh on lipids too. And this is because it's non-aromatizable, so it does increase HTGLA activity to break down those larger lipoproteins. But it's also just really potent at activating the androgen receptor. And so without the benefits of aromatizing to any estrogen, its reactive oxygen species formation in the heart, but also liver and kidneys, is not countervailed by any moderating influence of estrogen. So there you have it. This is why Anavar is surprisingly harsh on lipids. But perhaps you did learn something you did not already know, which is why Dianabol is fairly okay and on par with testosterone or nandrolone with respect to lipids. We also talked about why trenbolone is still hard on the heart despite not being an oral steroid. All right, this is for the beasts out there looking to take your gains to the next level who haven't yet read Bolus, a practical and reference guide for the use of human GH and GH secretagogues. This is not some bullshit bro science manual, nor is it a cynical money grab with some copied and pasted studies. Bolus is a game-changing practical and reference guide that is packed with real, research-based protocols that'll make it possible for you to reach stage-level conditioning and muscularity, if it's in the cards whatsoever, in short time and to a level impossible without this knowledge. Here's why you need this book in your life. Number one, it's got real protocols applied to real bodybuilders using compounds from GLP-1s to IGF-1s. We're talking bulk cut and recomp strategies that actually work. Number two, you learn how to interpret research like a pro. No more getting lost in the scientific jargon. This book teaches you how to look at these studies quickly. Number three, risk versus reward balancing, because we're not here to fuck up our bodies, we're here to optimize them. And number four, it covers everything from pharma grade to UGL preparations. You'll know everything that you're putting in your body. So whether you're a competitive bodybuilder, a strength athlete, or just fighting father time, Bolus has got you back. It's not just for meatheads either. This book is for chemists and physicians who are using it as a reference, at the very least, I imagine, to see what bodybuilders are actually doing in practice. So get a free preview of Bolus on the web at bolus.amplitude.com right now and learn how to do more with less.
Hey guys, I don't know what you're doing for your blood work, but if you're using anyone besides Physique, you're lighting money on fire and probably not getting the right biomarkers to boot. This is especially true if LabCorp's within driving distance to you because they're literally 1/3 the price of the competition. Use coupon code Type-IIx, that's TYPE-IIX. It's not case sensitive. You'll save 10%. If all you have nearby is Quest, they're still the best option because while there's like one cheaper company, they don't offer as many biomarkers and they end up not being worth it. So sign up for the Research Labs Insider at fitomics.org. That's FITOMICS.org for by far the best lab work options available in the US, except for New York, New Jersey, and Rhode Island, where self-requisition and blood work isn't legal, at least not yet. If you're confused at all, the best thing to do is visit my site at amplitude.com, click sign up for Type-IIx's newsletter, sign up, and when I send out my occasional, valuable, never spam newsletter, I include the steps to sign up and use Phytomics.
Okay, in this fourth section, the coach's corner, we'll discuss why more sets, reps, or sessions is not better for muscle gains and is actually much, much worse. The main point is this: bodybuilding is not an endurance sport. Muscular endurance and muscular size arise out of different mechanisms. Muscular endurance is a response of lactate buffering and enzymatic changes in response to high fatigue, whereas hypertrophy is an adaptation to progressive overload of intensity or weight lifted in moderate volumes. Nothing you can achieve in under an hour, 4 to 6 days a week. Excessive training volume, which is achieved by using too many sets, too many reps, or too many weekly sessions, causes high levels of muscle damage. Too high. Yes, some muscle damage and an inflammatory response, including immune system activation, is a part of what stimulates the hypertrophy adaptation. Note that these can be blunted or outright blocked by using potent anti-inflammatory drugs, like non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs or NSAIDs, like over-the-counter ibuprofen. Generally, anti-inflammatories shouldn't be used around training, either before or after, and certainly not when they're not absolutely necessary and part of an intentional treatment for a medical condition. Hypertrophy is an adaptation to moderate volume and sufficient muscular mechanical tension. The primary driver of hypertrophy is, in fact, mechanical tension. You can do as many jumping jacks as you'd like, but they're not likely to get you jacked. Adaptation depends on recovery. Recovery depends on rest and sleep. You grow outside the gym, in the kitchen and in bed, not in it. Hypertrophy occurs when muscle protein anabolic repair processes supercompensate above catabolic ones that break down protein and muscle. Anabolic steroids and peptides like growth factors increase these anabolic repair processes, directing metabolism towards anabolic over catabolic metabolism. A large muscle is a stronger muscle generally, but the reverse is not necessarily true. This is due to neural mechanisms and anthropomorphic characteristics. Like I discussed in the last episode 13, it is possible to get remarkably strong without making significant muscle size increases, basically by training like a weightlifter, strongman, or powerlifter, rather than like a bodybuilder. When it comes to optimal volume for a bodybuilder, effective reps are what matter, those last 5 or so maximal effort reps. There are diminishing returns and then negative returns, decreases to muscle size, as you increase volume beyond the optimal zone. Hypertrophy has an inverse U dose response curve, plotting volume versus muscle size changes. All right, guys, so that's the show. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you again soon. I promise to start putting more of these out on a regular interval.